Finally found it. My dream home. What a beautiful setting. I mean, picturesque mountain views across a beautiful meadow. A beautiful wooded backyard with a babbling trout-filled stream running through it, and the house. It's amazing, and the land it sits on is everything I could have ever hoped for. But what? It's in a flood zone. Oh no! Has my dream just become a nightmare? Owning a home in a flood zone? I mean, is that possible? Who came up with these flood zones anyway? The owner says he's never had a flood in the 40 years that he's lived here. So now, what do I do? Well, I'm about to give you all the answers to these questions and more. So hang around to the end of the video to find out more about the pros, the cons, and the possibilities of purchasing this type of home. But before we do that, let's go ahead and get started right now. If this is your first time to the channel, hi, my name's Stefan, and along with my wife Leslie, as real estate professionals, we have folks contact us all the time who are looking for help with buying or selling their home. So if that's you, call us, text us, or email us, and we'd be happy to help you on your journey. Also, if you'd like to learn more about the real estate in our area and lots more about the things to do in our beautiful mountains and valleys, subscribe to our channel and click that bell to come along with us for all of our amazing adventures. Now, as I was saying, can I own a home or build a home in a flood zone? What are flood zones? I mean, it's so confusing. Well, these are the questions that Leslie and I have heard from time to time, and honestly, it's one of the reasons you should seek a realtor's professional help in a matter like this, or anytime you're selling or purchasing a home. Now, it's not that we're here to provide legal advice or tell you whether or not you should build a home in a flood zone, but we can definitely point you in the right direction so that you can obtain the proper information and resources in order to make an informed decision. So, in today's video, we're going to answer a few questions about this topic. Number one, what is a flood zone? Number two, how do I find out if a property is in a flood zone? Number three, are there different types of flood zones? Number four, can I purchase or build a home in a flood zone? Number five, can flood zones change? And finally, number six, should I proceed with purchasing or building my dream home if it's in a flood zone? All right, so first, what is a flood zone? Well, the answer to this question may seem obvious. It's a place that's susceptible to flooding. And while that's true, having a deeper understanding of the risk of flooding involved in a particular area would be pretty important in helping me decide whether or not the home, land, or business I'm purchasing is really worth that risk. Now, it's important to remember, however, that any home is susceptible to flooding, especially when it rains, which is most places on the earth, right? And certainly in most of the United States. Now, even if a home is not near a creek, like we're here along the South River in Waynesboro today, or along a river, I mean, it could still experience different types of flooding if heavy, sustained rains saturate the ground. You could have a flood in your basement, or could possibly endanger the home's foundation as well. This is one reason that the National Flood Insurance Program was created in 1968. And today it's managed by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or you've heard before, Fema, who oversees flood zone mapping in the United States in order to show areas in the United States that are more susceptible to flooding. So this takes me to question number two. How do I find out if a property is in a flood zone? Excuse me. Well, you might find this out from several sources. Perhaps the property in which you are interested has this information disclosed on the property listing sheet. Perhaps you see it's in a flood zone on Realtor.com or another real estate website. Well, while this information can be helpful, it's always best for you to check out the information for yourself. And with that being said, here's a roadmap to several websites that can help you. Now let's start with the FEMA website. Now, if you just Google FEMA flood maps, it's going to take you several clicks and a little searching for you to get to the correct map. But eventually you want to get to the NFHL viewer page. For simplicity, here's the link to the flood map page of their website. Now don't worry about writing it down right now. I've added this link and a whole lot more in today's video in its description. So you can just click on them at the end and you can go straight to those different websites that I'm going to show you today. Okay, so all you need to do is to type in a specific address and it will bring you to a map that shows whether or not the property in which you're interested in is in a flood zone. For example, I'll type in an address that I've already looked up. And I know it's in a flood zone. So as you can see, this home is clearly located in a flood zone. You'll also see that there are blue areas, orange areas, hash marks, and other blue areas, and a whole lot more on the map. But what do they all mean? Well, if you just look below the picture of the map, you'll find a legend tab. And that legend tab details the meanings of all the colors and markings. For example, the blue areas are areas where it's possible to have at least a 1% chance of flooding during any year. The orange areas represent places that have a 0.2% chance of flooding during any year. Now, there's more to come on that 1.1% and 0.2% later. But the hash designates a regulatory floodway where special provisions have been made to reduce the amount of flooding. For example, in this area here in Waynesboro, a levee has been built that reduces flooding. Now, one thing I'd like to do is to click on the NFHL button above the map and to the right. This is going to open a larger map for you to see. Now, you'll have to retype the address into the search box once you get there, but with this screen, you can add or take away layers. Now, for some reason, the website has been experiencing issues, so if you're not seeing the flood zone areas, click on the Layers tab and choose a different layer. But this usually fixes the issue. Now, of course, I like the layers that you can actually see the streets and the homes. So you say, okay, I guess that answers my question. If it's in a flood zone, I'm not going to buy it. Or if I do, I have to get some type of flood insurance. And yes, that might be a couple of options you would have. But before I continue answering those questions from the beginning of the video, I just want to quickly show you some additional websites that are a huge help in gaining more information about flood zones. The Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation uses the FEMA maps on their website under the Virginia Flood Risk Information System. Again, just type in the webpage link, agree to their terms and conditions, and then type in the address for the property in which you're interested. Now, that's a small map too, but you can actually make the map larger by clicking on the View More Details tab below the map. From there, play around with the icons, like selecting the base map, and make sure you click on that NFHL layers box. And there you're going to be able to see all the other information. Now, another good website to use is OBI's Real Estate Risk Map. The process is similar to what we've already done, but on this website, you can also request an insurance quote once you've looked up a property address. So that might be something that would be of help to you. Now, there's one final website that I'd like to show you that will give you some great and quick information as to what the flood factor of a certain property is. First Street Foundation is an independent company, and their website provides a 1 to 10 ranking of the risk factor of properties in several categories, from flooding to fire to wind, and like I say, other categories as well. So why is this company and its website important? Well, because many company lenders use them to provide an estimate of the FEMA's flood zone designation for its properties. And this obviously affects you if you need a loan to purchase a property. So when you go to their website, just enter the address and you'll see that this property here in Waynesboro has an 8 out of 10 risk of flooding. Now, if you go to the upper right-hand corner of the page, you can click on the map view icon, and after you give them an email address, you can access the information. Now, when the free trial screen pops up, just click on the Back to Property button and you can see the map for free. Now, use the legend on the left to change the map views and to find out the extent to which the property may flood. You can check out some of the other risk factors as well while you're there. Now, if you want to know more about flood factor, watch this video titled Flood Factor Fundamentals, and it's going to give you some great information about flood factor. So I took some time, a lot of time actually, answering the question of how do I find out if a property is in a flood zone? And hopefully one of those resources will help you in your decision-making process when it comes time to purchase a home. So now let's move on to question number 3. Are there different types of flood zones? Yes. And while we briefly talked about this when I was just talking about the FEMA flood zone map, now here's a very simplified version of what's going to help you understand your risks. Basically, there are 2 areas that will be of concern: 500-year flood zones and 100-year flood zones. Well, what's the difference? Well, you can see on this chart it shows all of the classifications of potential floods. Are you confused? Well, so was I. So let's overly simplify it so that even I can understand. Now, first of all, there's moderate to low risk areas. Now, these are areas with a 0.2% chance or 1 in 500 chance of annual flooding. Now, additionally, there are high risk areas. Now, these areas are areas with a 1% chance of annual flooding. Now, as you can see, there are multiple classifications in the high risk area. The most common is the AE flood zones, which, according to FEMA, present a 1% annual chance of flooding and a 26% chance over the life of a 30-year mortgage. Now remember, the orange and blue shaded areas on the FEMA map, remember those? Well, blue shaded areas are in that 1% risk area, and those orange shaded areas are in the 2.2%, which are the moderate to low risk areas. Now, if you find yourself outside of one of these areas in an unshaded location, the chances are extremely good that you're probably not in a flood zone area. Now, notice I said probably, because as I mentioned earlier in the video, most any location that receives rain does have the possibility of flooding. Now, that was a very simplistic explanation of flood zones, but these classifications lead us to question number 4. Can I purchase or build a home in a flood zone? Well, the answer to that question is yes and no. Well, you say, what do you mean? Well, here's a few scenarios. First of all, what if the property is in the 500-year flood zone? Well, most likely the answer is going to be yes, because many lenders are going to allow you to borrow money to purchase or build a home. But what if the property is located in the 100-year flood zone? Well, that answer may be yes or no, and here's some examples of what I mean. So one of those things is, what if I'm purchasing a home using a lender? Or what if I'm purchasing a home using a bank? Yes, but many lenders will likely require you to purchase an additional flood insurance policy. And just remember that flood insurance might not be covered in your normal insurance. And your personal property won't be covered in that as well in case of a flood. So additionally, it should also be said that some lenders, if they don't deny you from purchasing in that area, some lenders may lend you money for a flood zone home and others might not. And this is why it's important for you to talk to your lender, because talking to your lender is one of the best things that you can do in order to determine whether or not you can buy property or purchase or build a home in a flood zone. Now, what if I'm paying all cash for a property? Yes, you can purchase any property you wish because you're the one that's paying the cash. Just remember though, that if you wish to insure the property, most those normal home insurance policies, most companies, they don't provide flood insurance in their general homeowners policy. For that, you'll need to pay extra for an additional rider policy if you want it. Don't have to get it, but you're at risk then. Also, it's possible that certain federal, state, county, and local laws would prohibit construction in a particular area, and that could come into effect as well. So if you're paying cash, be sure to check out these things before you buy, especially if you're building a home on land in a flood zone. Now, what if the loan I have is a government program loan? No, you cannot purchase a home in a flood zone if your lender is qualifying you to purchase utilizing funding coming through programs such as FHA, USDA, and VA loans. Now, to clarify a couple of additional no's that I've already talked about, but your lender could deem the property too much of a risk to lend you money, even with the purchase of additional flood insurance. And the answer could also be no if there are certain state, county, federal, local laws that prohibit you from building in a particular area. Well, what about question number 5? Can flood zones change? Yes, flood zones can change due to multiple factors. For example, perhaps you or a local authority has built a levee or rerouted a body of water in order to prevent flooding. Now, perhaps there have been additional wetland areas that have been established upstream or upriver or up a creek that has resulted in a lesser chance of your property now flooding. Now, I can also go the other way as well. Maybe additional development has created more water runoff, which causes lakes and streams to flood more quickly. Thus, it enlarges and the flood zone area because it's been reshaped because of all that building. So there are many reasons why flood zones can change, and with FEMA only updating their maps about every 15 years on average, there could be areas that are no longer accurate. Hence, the reason to work with your lender immediately. Now, when I say immediately, if you even suspect that there's a possibility or a chance of flooding, get in contact with your lender. Now, if you believe a property that it's changed, let's say that the flood zone has changed, whether most of the time we'd probably be thinking if it's changed in our favor, right? But you can go to the FEMA website. Now, their managed website allows you to submit a letter of map change if you believe a particular flood zone area has changed. Sound intimidating to have to deal with FEMA? Well, it does to me. So here's another resource. The nationalfloodexperts.com will give you a free consultation to see if the potential exists to change your flood zone map. If there is, they'll do most of the work for you, and they'll help you wade through all that government red tape to get it done. Additionally, there are more things that they can do that may have a financial impact in your favor as a property owner. Now, I found this information on this webpage by Sam Williams. Sam's a very knowledgeable individual, and as I read through the resources on his page, I also gleaned some new information myself that I'd been previously unaware of. So check him out. There's lots of details which you can help to further educate yourself about flood zones. All right, so that leads me up to our final question, number 6. Should I proceed with purchasing or building my dream home if it's in a flood zone? Well, more importantly than me telling you what I think, that question is really only one that you can answer. After you've heard the information from today's video and probably done more research online, and are you comfortable with purchasing that dream property, knowing that while it may never flood, you do have the risk of a potential flood? What precautions should you take, especially if you're building a home, to make sure that your valuables are protected in case of a flood? Maybe you build a garage on the first floor, maybe you don't have a basement, things like that. And at the end of the day, having a beautiful home on a beautiful property with a trout-filled creek running through the woods, all in your backyard, it may outweigh the risks of that 100-year flood. But in other cases, you might want to run away from that dream property as fast as you can. But that's the thing, it's totally up to you. But I hope that this video has given you a better idea of how to make that decision if you're considering a flood zone property. I also hope it's given you a reason to partner not just with any realtor, but with a realtor who's knowledgeable about the resources and who can point you in the right direction to get more information about a flood zone property. And at the end of the day, the location of your home, whether it's inside a flood zone or outside a flood zone, is of course a very important decision, an important factor to weigh that you should make sure of before you purchase a property. Especially remember if you're paying with cash, and this isn't going to be something that's going to be double checked by a lender. So whatever your situation may be, Leslie and I are always ready to assist you in helping you purchase or sell your home. We'd love to meet you. But we can't do that unless you contact us for help. So please, we invite you to call us, text us, email us, and we will be happy to help make selling your home or purchasing your dream home come true. But until next time, here from the banks of the beautiful South River here in Waynesboro, Virginia, I will see you around town.